Hi there, everyone. This is Sharon for Self-Care You podcast, the intersection of self-care, advocacy, and compassion for self-caregivers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, for this episode, I want to say this episode is a special episode. It is September, so we're going to spotlight because September is a busy month of when it comes to awareness. So we're going to spotlight life insurance, Life Insurance Awareness Month, yoga awareness month, self-care awareness month, and Suicide Prevention Month. And then there are some other things that's in the month of September as well. And so it's Cholesterol Awareness Month. It is Idiopathic Intracranial Hypertension Awareness Month. It is National Recovery Month. Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and Polycystic Ovary Syndrome and Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And so, okay, so as self-care entrepreneur, as the number one self-care authority, self-care, again, let me kind of go back. For those of you who don't know me, all right, I am all about self-care and learning and practicing different things, more so in advocating and teaching others the importance of taking care of yourself and how it is just essential. A lot of times when we think about self-care, we think about the luxury of self-care, the chocolate cake, chocolate ice cream, the massages, and the bubble baths. It is that, okay? Don't get it twisted. It is that, but it's all the things that we need in order to cultivate the highest version of ourselves emotionally, mentally, physical, spiritually, and even financially. So it's the things that you need to do in order to have the self-awareness, to be able to reflect, to be able to pretty much go deep within yourself, to have that self inquiry and contemplate of the different things in your life so that you have the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to move and take action. And with moving and take action, it's sitting in silence, be able to do that again, to cultivate the knowledge and the wisdom, and to have that deep rest to rejuvenate your mind, your body, your spirit, and your soul. So all of those things are definitely needed. And a lot of times, we think about self-care in that relaxation state. Yes, we want to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's that part of the nervous system, is that they call it the rest and digest. Just pretty much, let's just say, to turn off the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, to pretty much not to always be in the active of what I want to say, not to want to activate of really being surviving mode. We want to stay away from that. But however, the other part of it is important too, because it helps keeps us safe, and help us, when we do need to fight, when we do need to take action when it comes to certain things. But I would say staying in any one of those for too long is not good either. Could you stay in rest for too long? What they say, about at rest would stay at rest, and you don't want that either. So when I was looking at what the topic is going to be today, and I was really looking at, in which you heard me say, when it comes to September Awareness Month, oh my, I was like, everything really comes together. And so you're like, Sharon, what does all of this have to do with one another? It has everything to do with one another. And so by September being Life Insurance Awareness Month, that is a form of self-care. Is what are the things that you can do to help educate yourself of, like, do you have enough life insurance? Do you have the right life insurance? Are you putting money in places? And along with that, when it comes to a will and having a trust, are you safeguarding, your finances, not only for now, but for the future, and in learning different ways of how you can generate generational wealth. And it starts now. It's about planning. It's not waiting for something to happen, because when it comes to, GoFundMe, even though it has helped a lot of people, but it cannot take away of the emotional pain that a family goes through when they lose someone, or even when someone is diagnosed, like, with a medical condition. And so, in saying all that, you're like, Sharon, what does that have to do with self care? It has everything to do with self care, because even though you can be healthy today, anything can happen to anyone. Someone can get into a car accident and they can survive but end up having a traumatic brain injury, or they can have an injury that can last for months. And especially if someone is the primary breadwinner. And so it's like, a lot of times we don't plan for that. We may plan for when we die, but then I have come to learn that there are some people like, when I'm dead, why am I worried? No, you don't have to worry. It's your family, especially if you have family that you will live behind. And even if you are single, meaning you're not married, you don't have any children, still, what do you have in place? What do you want to happen to your assets that you have, especially if you own a home or you own a business? What do you want to happen? So it's about putting things in place. And this is where the life insurance come into play. And so, in saying that, a self-care act is putting things in place so that when it comes to your family's emotional and financial stability, they would know what your wishes are. And again, it's not just if you die, but what about if you live? How would things be taken care of? And so, with that, again, that's a form of self-care, because remember, self-care is cultivating, activities that cultivate you emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. And we must make sure that we add that piece of the financial piece of there, excuse me for that, so that you can learn and educate yourself in so many different ways. Because believe you me, it's kind of like, I knew I needed to. Oh, I'm going to get to it. And next thing you know, 5, 10, 15, and to be honest, even 20 years can go by and nothing will be done and nothing will be in place. And you never know where you will be. And so, again, as a part of self-care, and I'm going to show you how life insurance can play a part in your life. Now, did you listen to me of what the awareness month is? Oh, actually, I have a couple more. Wow. Okay. So, September Awareness Month includes Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, Childhood Obesity Awareness Month, Cholesterol Awareness Month, Death International Awareness Month, Leukemia Awareness Month, National, what is it? National Pain Month, Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, Recovery Month, and Idiopathic Intracranial Hypertension Awareness Month. Okay, that is how many? That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I believe that's correct. We're going to go with that. Let's just say 10 to make it easy, okay? All right. So that is 10 different types of medical conditions that can impact someone's life at different times in their life. Like we talked about, we talked about childhood cancer and childhood obesity. And then remember with obesity, it's the complications that can happen to a person. And so this is one reason why it's so important to make sure our child, even a baby, have life insurance at an earliest age so that if anyone pretty much end up with the medical condition. And again, I always have to say, depends on what they qualify for and depends on how it is prepared, where they can be covered and that you can have the means to help pay for some of these things. And this also comes into when it comes to some mental health disorders as well. And again, the earlier that you do, you're preparing for two things. You're preparing for a wonderful life and you're preparing for if something was to happen. And I know sometimes people have like different philosophies of thinking, oh, if I do this, that means that will happen. Let's get real. How many times has someone have gotten in an accident? How many times has that someone that we know has been as healthy as they can be to end up having cancer? And it is the financial challenge that really can take someone over of either almost losing a house or losing a house or not. And just think about it, not knowing how it's going to be paid when they need to really be thinking about or really focus on recovery, And so this is where life insurance come into play because with all of these things, no one knows, what can happen to them. And like when it comes to high cholesterol, too much high cholesterol can end up with a heart disease. And what is heart disease? Which can lead to a heart attack. What are the complications of a heart attack? They end up having to have surgery. And then sometimes some people can have so much of a complication, they may not be able to return to work. So this is where, again, self-care comes into play to help prevent the other things self-care comes into play. Let's say someone is eating right and exercising. And yes, sometimes because the stress can be so much over a period of time that someone still can end up having a heart attack. But one thing I will say is that for individuals who have a habit or ritual or practice of taking care of themselves, most individuals' recovery end up being, I would say, much better than others who do not have that practice. Can we say it's 100%? No, but you have more of a chance of recovering in a much healthier way. However, it still does not mean like how long you will be off. And so when you have insurance, the right insurance in place that can help you with this financially so that your family, because you may not even when you're going through this, you may not even be thinking about, the finances part, or at least not initially. Depends on where you are in the recovery stage. But this is as a way, as a self-care act, this is how you are taking care of yourself. You're taking care of your family. Because the other thing is the emotional toll that it can take on your family when things are not in place and they have to worry about these things in the coming months, and that it can impact their health, and they can end up having a heart attack or stroke or some or a panic attack or something, because they don't know how the mortgage or the rent is going to be paid, or they want to get you the best care, or you want to get the best care for your family. And so this is why it's so important for you to put things in place, even for babies, because you don't know. Because what are one of the things that I've read? Death. That can be at any age. You hear? That can be at any age for anybody. So if someone is experiencing that at an early age, and again, there are certain medical conditions that is considered, like critical and chronic. So if some of these things would fall in, but let's just say they fall into a disability. So let's put that in there. And so, in saying all of that, this is why, again, self-care, it includes of you taking care of business. It includes of you making sure that things are in place for your loved one. That is an act of self-care. And so, chronic pain, however, I put it like this: it may not fall into the living benefits of critical care and chronic. It may or may not saying that it is, but if you have the right policy early enough in life, there's a way that you can be taken care of. So just remember that. And so we know about prostate cancer. We know about polycystic ovary syndrome. And again, some of these, the prostate cancer is, but the polycystic ovary may or may not be considered a chronic. For some, it may, a chronic condition. But one thing that I will say, there is one that I wanted to include. Oh, idiopathic intracranial hypertension. And I keep having to take my glasses off. In that, there is a video out there that I did. It may have been two that I've done in the past regarding idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Definitely go and look at that. And I recently came across some information. I feel so blessed. And again, but this is an example how someone can be diagnosed with something. I think I was in my 30s. I think it was in my 30s when I was diagnosed with this. Oh no, I wasn't in my 30s. I was in my 40s. I was in my 40s when I was diagnosed with that and started having symptoms of that. And so, just in saying, at any time in life, again, if you have the right insurance, one, I was blessed where I did not have complications, but most people have complications with this rare disease. So, and then when you think about MS, and so there's so many different things that can happen in a person's life. But let me make sure I say this. It's not enough just to say, oh, well, I have this insurance. It is about really educating yourself about the benefits, about what it is that you are getting. Educate. Again, financial literacy is so important to all of us. I wish I knew the things that I know now. I'm like, oh my. So for those of us who are, in the medical field, in the wellness community, yes, let's make sure that we are educating people because we have special knowledge. We have advantages in knowing what of the complications that happen to people. And we may have experienced it ourselves when it comes to our own family, our own friends, but we definitely see it firsthand with the individuals that we provide services for. And so it's kind of like what the world or what your world would be when you're not taking the self-care act of making sure business is taken care of financially. And it's based on what's in your budget. Start where you are now, but when you start thinking in a certain way, you're going to make sure that it's going to continue to grow and you're going to continue to have what's in place. And so even though this is a multi-awareness month, you see how it's all tied together because anyone can be impacted by any of these things at any point in their lives, anywhere from a baby, from young children to adolescents to an adult. And so when you already have things in place as early as you can, then you can help take care of the person, who brings in the money. Because if that is impacted, if the primary breadwinner is impacted, it really influences the household. And most people are not, like they don't have that extra cash, that extra money to help another family out. And even if they do, most of the time they can only do it for a short period of time. And so this is where self-care comes into play. So now to say all of that, it's like, what other self-care acts can you do to help prevent things from happening? I did mention regarding suicide prevention month that September is also suicide prevention month. And just think about, like with some of the medical diagnoses, even though of course, it's not like the main reason, but it can definitely complicate things because, someone doesn't, people, those individuals who die by suicide do not always have a medical conditions, but when they do, it can increase someone, I don't want to say increase the chances, but it can increase the probability of someone pretty much contemplating suicide. And there's so many different reasons, and there's so many things that we will never understand of the pain that someone is going through. But one of the reasons that this is, I would say, related to insurance and to self-care is in the sense that if the person, let's say, is considered to be, and of course we know that's not always the case, but let's just say it's considered to have a mental health disability that they qualify for, and it depends on what type of insurance that they have, maybe they can get be able to afford the care that they need to get what they need. Because one thing that I will say that I discovered, did not know this until later in my career as a mental health therapist, is that even with insurance and health insurance, and whether it's Medicaid or Medicare, and those are not the best insurance either. In that, but even with insurance, I don't want to, I say the major insurance companies, I don't want to name them because I'm not calling any of them out. However, I will say those individuals who can pay out of pocket, they get the better care. They can really choose who they really want because of the fact when it comes to insurance, Sometimes the providers may not accept that insurance, or the insurance company may not have that provider, you know, as a provider. So, in saying all of that, this is why it's so important, as I say, when it comes to building your generational wealth and having things in care, I'm saying care, in place, so that you can have the choices, have the choices that you want in order to take care of yourself. And so this is why it's so important to look at your insurance and say, what do I have in care? Do I have that I need to upgrade it? And I said, what do you have in care? What do you have in place? And whether or not do you need to upgrade the policy that you have. So definitely take a look at that, And so another form of self-care is, you heard me talk about yoga and meditation. And so that comes into play, especially when you're dealing with some medical conditions, because it's kind of like, what are you doing to take care of yourself? And a lot of times, when you hear about yoga, you think about, yoga on the mat, of doing the postures or doing the asanas, but also it's about the philosophy of yoga, we kind of call it yoga off the mat. And so again, that's kind of going back to the self-care, like what are you doing in order to take care of yourself? And one of these days I'll break, kind of things down for you, and when it comes to the yoga philosophy and how it aligns up with different parts of us, when it comes to life, let's say off the mat. And so again, the spotlight is the September Awareness Month. As we can see, there are so many different challenges out there to be aware of, but there's also so many wonderful things that you can do to take care of yourself. Again, it's Self-Care Awareness Month, it is Life Insurance Awareness Month, and it's Yoga Awareness Month. And even though with some of the medical conditions that I have mentioned, um, I would say some, some of them you may not have control over or what you can do to prevent them, but most of them you can. And like I say, however, even when people are taking care of themselves, sometimes they can still have a heart attack, they can still have a stroke. And it's like the devastation of what that does to the person, not if they die, but if they live, what happens to the person, what happens to the family, and just by making sure that you're financially secure, that things are in place. Because when someone paycheck stops, again, like they say, most of us are paycheck to paycheck. If there's one paycheck, some people may be able to do two. It's kind of like, are you able to live sometimes 3 months, maybe 6 months, but anything beyond that, most people don't have that in place. And so when you're setting things up, a self-care act is, let me look at my life, not just for today, but look at your life for tomorrow, for your family. Because again, you're looking at, what are the things, like, if I don't put this in place, if you don't put this in place, what will happen to your family? How will they survive? And again, we're talking about when you're living, because I'm assuming that you have things in place. But if you don't, make sure you contact me so that we can talk more. But even if you do, let's still talk to see if if you need an upgrade, and what are some things you need to think about. So again, this is Life Insurance Awareness Month. It is Self-Care Awareness Month, and it is yoga. Let's just say Sit down in silence so that you can get clarity of what you need to do so that you can be the best version of yourself, so that you can take care of your family. Because how much we want life just to be, just so grand, of just really just sitting in silence. But we also have to make sure that you face the reality of what is happening around you, making sure you're taking care of business, of keeping the standards that you have for yourself. It's like, how do you really, want your family to be? Where do you want your family to be if something was to happen? I know no one never wants to talk about it. They never wants to talk about it. But what you don't talk about, you know how we say, like, with emotions, if you suppress, it would explode. It's the same thing. Anything you don't talk about, it was either implode or explode. And when it comes to your health or your family health, in that it doesn't only impact you, it impacts individuals around you. And so continue to do the things that needs to be done that can be beneficial for you, your family, your loved ones. And it's about not just having conversations, but about putting things in place. No one likes it, but we never know what's going to happen. We live in abundance as if nothing's going to happen, but we also plan for the future as well, as if something can happen, because we all know someone where something tragic has happened and they didn't have anything in place. And so don't let that be you. So this is what self-care is all about you taking care of yourself from the inside out. And also when it comes to, I just say, signing some papers to put things in place. That is what self-care is all about. So thank you for listening to Self-Care You podcast.